One of the biggest complaints that people have when they're stuck on bottom, especially in any sort of crossbody side control situation, but also oftentimes when you're on bottom of half guard, is the crossface. And that's really the preferred control point, a crossface and an underhook, to be able to really lock down the shoulder line and then enable somebody to maybe pin you and pass from half guard top, or just to make your life miserable and pin you from side control. And a heavy crossface can actually make you pass out, certainly is very draining, and it's one of the things that can restrict your ability to be able to really get your escapes game going. So a lot of times people are just, quite frankly, feeling that they're suffering under that position. So let's talk about how to be able to negate it. Now, there will be times where you are, in fact, pinned dead to rights, but what we're going to be looking at is the principle of torso rotation, but very specifically shoulder rotation, to be able to beat this. Shoulder rotation, properly understood, will come up in so many different situations in jiu-jitsu and can solve so many problems. We're just going to limit it to this one situation right now about how to negate the crossface. But what I want you to think about is there's some situations where we want to have what I often call the master posture, which would just be sort of perfect posture of a straight spine. Normally the spine has an S curve, so we're kind of doing a yoga style of posture where I have my cervical spine all the way down to my tailbone as flat as possible. But in this case, when we're talking about shoulder rotation, what we're thinking about is the alternate extension of one scapular and shoulder and the retraction of the other. So basically think if you were to shot put on one side while doing a row on the other side. So you notice what's happening here. I'm going into rotation on this side and scapular retraction here, and then the same here. So that motion is extremely powerful in application for jiu-jitsu. Let's take a look at this. So first we'll do a standard crossface, and then with the gi on, we'll take a look also at a variation of it that's really tough called the pry bar. So from here, say, even if I'm a little bit on my side, Steve is going to be able to slide that shoulder low, okay? Really get that in. Now he's turning my jaw and my chin away, and then once he has that, then he can slide his shoulder even further down. Yeah, get down. Yes, exactly. Sometimes I might actually have to tap to that, because once his shoulder goes in here and then I'm starting to actually choke a little bit on the other shoulder, that pressure can make somebody pass out. But for sure, it's very limiting for me to escape. Okay. When we look at a pry bar, he will bring his thumb into the gi, and now from here, once the thumb goes deep, he can do the same effect as a crossface by raising his elbow and forcing my head to the side. Very, very strong position. And a lot of you probably use that on top as well, but suffer when somebody's doing it to you. First thing is I want to just show here, you'll notice that what's happening structurally, not just with my head, is that where the head goes, the body follows. So he's forcing me into basically a torso or a trunk rotation, starting with my head, and then my shoulders follow suit. So anytime this top shoulder starts to go behind the bottom shoulder, he's going to be able to flatten me out, and that's what this is going to facilitate. So from here, I cannot let that happen. But the thing is, I can't just push my top shoulder forward and beat him because he has more leverage here. So all I'm going to do is scoot my hip back and then retract my bottom shoulder as I drive my top shoulder forward. Okay? Now at this moment, if you go to flatten me out, Steve, okay, at this moment it becomes very difficult. And let's say he starts to win that battle, I move my hip back and I retract again. Okay? Go ahead with a pry bar. Let's see that. So let's just cheat the angle here just a little bit. Okay. Start to go for the pry bar. Okay. Now from here, yes, he was able to force my head back, and now my top shoulder starts to go behind my bottom shoulder. Let's look at it again. I move my hip back, retract my shoulder, go. Pry bar. Yes. Okay. So that's the initial piece where when you have the limit on your head and shoulder line, you have to move your downstairs before you can move your upstairs. So all I'm going to be doing from here, instead of, you kind of see me at this angle, instead of doing a back bend and then being rotated flat, just think about with your foot on the mat, move your hips back, and then drive your top shoulder forward as your bottom shoulder retracts. Now as we take a look at this, okay, Steve has a crossface or a pry bar, and what I can start to do from here, okay, one is to go away from it. So I'm just gonna go to my knees and back up with a pry bar, okay? From here he's got me. Here, okay, go ahead, put it in again, nice and strong, good. From here, as he goes to the pry bar, I just go back. So option one is you yield to it, you go away from it. So you're not trying to fight with your neck against that frame. That's where you wind up injuring your neck. Instead, you fade back. But the first thing you had to do was buy yourself the angle. Second option is, I can actually rotate through to my knees. So instead of yielding here, once I get safe, I'm actually going to go to my knees here and actually come up to my knees. Problem is now you might be saying, but the moment you do that, Steve could hop on my back, okay? So just remember, if we go to the side here for a second. So I get my angle, I'm shooting my top arm through as I retract my bottom arm, and I'm going to my knees. The moment I get here, look, the moment I get to my knees, I'm gonna control across his hip line, and my knee comes up behind, okay? So that is just part of the motion. The moment I hit my knees, boom, lock it in here, try and take my back. Good. Not only can he take my back, but all I need to do is sit down, and I wind up on top. So really good to start off doing this very slowly and have your partner start to ratchet on the pressure. If you try and just barrel through it with a lot of speed, intensity, you're gonna miss the feel. You're gonna miss that moment to really feel that you have the proper rotation where they can't do it. So start off a little bit slow. Make sure you can kind of feel how you're not fighting into them with your neck, but you're instead moving where they're not. Always facilitated by this angle. Then you can start to add the speed and the fluidity, and it'll become part of your game.